Hello, welcome to the Couch Coven. I am your host, Laura,
And I'm Teddy.
and today we are talking about military indoctrination and nationalist culture.
hmm
Trauma is what I was going to say. We're talking about how severely negatively impacting mental health the military can be,
Oh, yeah.
nationalist indoctrination, all of that good stuff, and how it's very rampant. I've never lived in another country, so I don't know what their culture is like with their militaries there, but here, the military might as well be Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus and the military are very synonymous. If you've ever heard the song Independence Day,
Hmm.
the line, roll the stone away, it's Independence Day, is talking about Jesus' resurrection plus American patriotism.
Oh my God. I never acknowledged that. Yeah. Good Lord. So Teddy here has obviously religious trauma connected to that military indoctrination, whereas mine is just straight up military indoctrination and nationalist ideologies. They weren't relying on religion for anything in any way, shape, or form. They were relying on their Republican presidents to tell them what to think and the higher ups in the military to tell them what to do. That's the entirety of the influence. So, we love to start every episode with pulling a tarot card and talking about some spirituality we've experienced. I meditate a lot and I receive symbols, so I'm going to mention some of those. Teddy is going to pull a card for us today. So, whenever you're ready, Teddy. I did not mean to rhyme that. I've never said that before, and I'm sorry. And I'm probably going to say it again.
Ready, Freddy. Maybe I should change my name to Freddy. God, no. No.
Yeah, don't do that.
I've already been shuffling these, and the card that I keep splitting the deck to is the Knight of Coins. So I'm going to shuffle again. He's probably going to be on the bottom. Yep. And I'm going to give that one more shuffle. I try to distinguish between whether or not it's vague OCD symptoms or if it's actually the universe telling me to keep shuffling. But sometimes I just have to do it until it feels right. And I don't know if that's OCD or not.
I do the same thing, and I also question that in my head as I'm shuffling. Does this feel right, or is this OCD?
Sometimes I'll shuffle 10 times in a row and have to sit there, tell myself, that's enough. It's fine. That's enough. You'll get the cards you need to get. That's enough.
Whatever cards come up, the message will come across. Just fucking stop.
They'll tell you to get your shit together one way or the other. I shuffled again, and Knight of Coins is on the bottom.
Okay.
On top, we have the Nine of Pentacles reversed. Pentacles represents the earth. It's the slowest moving suit. It's about longevity, monetary, physical reality. While I'm speaking, I may go between pentacles and coins because the deck I'm using has coins instead of pentacles, but it's the same thing. The Knight of Pentacles is the slowest moving knight. Typically, the knights represent journeying, having learned lessons and continuing to grow. The Knight of Coins in my deck that I'm using, I actually really love because he is in a wheelchair, which I think is really inclusive, genuinely, and it also shows that there are different ways of being. I always have trouble with him. I'm going to be really honest. The other knights I find to be rather clear, whereas the Knight of Coins seems ambiguous. Other than it signifying taking time to not rush the journey, the only thing I'm really getting from this is you're on your way, slow down. It's okay to take a minute and not rush yourself and to not push yourself past the roadblocks you are interpreting as disability.
Being methodical is what I get from it.
Being methodical. I like that word. In conjunction with the Knight of Coins, we have the reversed Nine of Coins. The nine often meaning nearing the end of a journey, it's reversed. So I'm interpreting this spread as slow down, take your time. You are seeing a finished product, but it's still in the process. Take it easy. The harvest isn't going anywhere.
For this card in particular, I do get kind of like a duality. What I get from this card is either you're not paying enough attention to what you're doing on your path and you're getting distracted, or you're paying too much attention to what your main path is and you're not paying attention to all the little things in life. I get this as like a reminder to stay present, at least when it's reversed.
Thank you, universe. You have symbols you want to talk about?
My last meditation session, again, I usually get symbols that are objects. The images I got in my last meditation session were a group of Native women. There were three of them, and they were all from different generations. There was a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter. And they were all extremely happy, content, and full of warmth. I felt like it is possibly a premonition of what is on the other side of all of this strife our country and our world are experiencing right now. There will be a matriarchal lineage that creates warmth and happiness. I choose to see it as a good sign. It felt very good.
Can I tell you something?
Tell me everything.
In this same deck, my 10 of coins is a matriarchal lineage of Native women.
Whoa.
Surrounded by abundance. There's 4 generations being seen here, but it still carries the same sentiment. When you started talking about Native women, I got so excited because that's the card. Don't miss what you're going through right now. Don't miss where the future is going to go. Stay
Yeah.
present. Damn, that's so cool. I love this. I love this card. Cool.
So to be fair, my friend George listened to our podcast and he was like, hey, the only thing I would say is the intro feels a bit long because he's like, sometimes I listen to podcasts, the introduction takes a while before you get to the nitty gritty. And I'm like, oh yeah, no worries, dude. I totally understand. We're not minimizing our intro because we're doing the card reading and I love it. So we're going to keep talking about the cards and the symbols.
I mean, that's part of it. We're the Couch Coven. It all intertwines. It's part of us. Sorry. Not sorry. I'm a little chaos witch and I love it. And you're just going to have to deal with it.
All right. Shall we get into the nitty gritty?
We shall get into the knit and the grit.
If you guys haven't figured out the cadence of our episodes yet, is we tend to start off with a bunch of facts and figures. I want to go into some facts and figures I pulled regarding the health of veterans and what those experiences are. According to the National Veterans Homeless Support Organization, military veterans are 1.5 times more likely to commit suicide than the average citizen. According to the National Library of Medicine, a large 9-year study revealed that 43% of veterans struggle with mental health illness, showing prevalent PTSD and substance abuse among those numbers. According to the Department of Labor, 30% of veterans have a service-related disability, so a disability that they got from being in the military. According to the National Coalition for Homeless Vets, 51% of homeless veterans have a disability, 50% of them have a mental illness, and 70% have a substance abuse problem. If you're listening in and you're like, wow, 51%, 50%, and 70%, just for people who have a hard time with this concept, this is a Venn diagram. These percentages do not make up one thing. These are all separate things. So I just want to say that because I'm somebody who gets confused with numbers and that might sound weird. 51% of homeless vets have a disability. 50% have a serious mental illness and 70% have a substance abuse problem. Just an idea of what our veterans go through, despite the government acting like they get all these benefits. No, they're actually treated pretty garbage. And it's because of all of the conditioning. If you don't realize, when you are conditioned to
think of yourself as anything other than cannon fodder, it's very easy to manipulate you into becoming cannon fodder.
Yes, exactly. So like, for instance, I grew up in a military family. Every male in my family has either been in the military or been a police officer. Some of the women as well. My mom was in the Navy, dad was in the Navy. All of my aunts and uncles were some way involved. Both my grandfathers were in the military. It's very big. What's attached to that is also some pretty serious misogyny. I grew up being like, no, I can do everything that a man can do because I was constantly being told otherwise and I had to prove myself. When you're told being in the military is the right thing to do, being in the military makes you strong, committing to a duty that serves your country is like the highest honor. Being in the military is like, I don't know, being a missionary or something. It's literally like a conquest. This idea of like, I'm a soldier of the United States, and that means I have the utmost respect in the world. And then there's all of this attached to it too, where it's just like, oh, don't put the American flags on your uniform, but don't let it touch the ground because then you have to burn it and die. Like, it's crazy. All of the, not die, but like literally, they're like, if the flag touches the ground, you have to burn it.
I didn't know that part.
That's like it's like tradition.
I know you're not supposed to let it touch the ground.
If it touches the ground, then it's been disrespected and you must burn it as a effigy or on like a funeral pyre. It's literally like having a funeral for a human. Growing up, my family told me that it was illegal for the American flag to touch the ground. That's not true at all.
I feel like I believe that as well. I feel like that was pushed on me as well.
Somehow. I think it was connected to 9/11. Which was another really weird thing that was part of our family because my mom worked in the Pentagon during 9/11, and it was so weird, and, like,
Mhm.
that actually promoted people from our generation to join the military. My experience starts way back because I come from this military family, so as a child, I would be punished if I didn't address my mom and my dad as ma'am or sir. So it was really weird because in the military, you only call officers sir and ma'am. If they're an enlisted member and they're not an officer, you call them by their
Okay.
rank. It was this really weird thing where they demanded this respect where I had to call them sir or ma'am, not understanding the cognitive dissonance. As I got older and like would call people sir or ma'am out of respect because that's what was demanded of me at home, I would speak to somebody who was actively in the military and they would be offended that I called them sir or ma'am. And they'd be like, I work for a living. Who do you think you are? Blah, blah. And I'm like, my mom and dad told me to say that to you. And there'd always be people my parents know. It almost felt like I was being set up for failure. You're saying this out of respect, but if you say it to the wrong person, they're going to be upset with you. It was so bizarre.
Not to derail you, but the experience that I have, especially with men and older men, calling them sir and then them getting offended, military or
Hmm.
not, is very strange. I referred to my friend as sir at one
Hmm.
point, almost in a jokey
Yeah.
way because we're friends and so we're like on the same level as peers, even though he's like 40 years older than I am. And so I called him sir and he was like, "Don't call me sir." And I looked at him and I went, why does every man that I meet get upset when I call them sir? I was taught that it was a sign of respect and that's the way you're supposed to address people. He acquiesced and he went, yeah, it is a sign of respect. I've had that experience so many times with men, especially men who are in some position of authority within their friend group. I hung out with a group of bikers for probably about 2
Hmm.
years. There was a hierarchy of authority within that group. Even if I addressed those people as sir, they would either laugh and mock
Hmm.
me, or I remember this one guy, I called him sir, trying to be
Hmm.
respectful. I'm in their
Yeah.
space. He goes, "I'm not sir, that's my father." Oh, fucking
Yeah.
K.
Okay, ma'am. I don't know what you want me to call you then.
I'm 22 and I'm wasted. Brother, I'm here for a good
Yeah.
time.
Why are you doing
Why are
this?
you I'm trying to be respectful.
I think that might be part of it. When you call somebody sir, it feels very much like you're speaking to an authority figure rather than somebody who is a peer. It's offensive to men to think that a beautiful lady in their 20s was not seeing them as a peer because I feel like that's been my experience, especially like when I was younger working in bars
Huh.
and stuff like that. If I tried to be respectful with a regular or a manager, whoever, I would get a similar reaction too, where it was just like, sir, like, or mister, that's my father. And I'm like, well, you're old enough to be my father. I'm not in the wrong here. I'm saying what I'm supposed to say.
My experience with women calling them ma'am to put them in that space as an elder, so to speak, they like it.
Yeah.
They accept it because they're not seen as that by the majority of society.
Yeah.
So that dichotomy catches me off guard. I love calling women miss and ma'am, especially when they're older than me, especially when they are someone who is my mother's age
Hmm.
or even just my age, because it's a little sign of respect. It's almost affectionate
Yeah.
in many circumstances in my life.
Yeah.
I needed to say that about calling men sir
Yeah.
because they get so
They
offended
do.
and then get offended when you don't treat them with the respect they think they deserve.
One last little thing. I remember the first time I was ever called ma'am in a store by like somebody working at the store. And I was like 18 or 19, so I was still very young, but it
Uh-huh.
was, somebody working that was like 15 or 16, like it was like her first job or something like
Yeah.
that. So like to her, I was an older person and I was just like, "Oh my god, no one's ever called me ma'am before." For a split second, I was like, "Oh, that makes me feel old." And then the other part of me was like, "Oh my god, I'm so mature."
I feel the same way whenever someone calls me ma'am, especially the first few times that I got called ma'am. I was working in a retail environment when I was about 19, and most of our patrons were older.
Mhm.
Being referred to as ma'am, yeah, I felt like I was receiving respect,
Yeah.
being seen as somebody to be respected.
And that's not something that I experienced growing up ever because
Mhm.
women did not garner respect in my family. Women barely garner respect in the military, especially at the time that I joined. It was a whole different beast. I mean, it was still don't ask, don't tell. It was still stuck in time. And I almost got court martialed for standing up for a trans person in basic training. So we'll go into that another time. Yeah, there was no respect for women women in my family. The only person who was allowed to receive respect was my grandmother, because she was the matriarch of the family, because my grandfather killed himself a long time ago.
Oh.
And so she was the matriarch of the family. She was the only female in my family that garnered any respect. And I didn't fully acknowledge that until I moved back to be near family several years ago. And I realized that all of the women in my family have chronic depression, and it's really obvious. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, the men in my family are depressed as well, but they move around the world like they're allowed to have respect.
Yeah, they take up space.
Exactly. They take up space. With the exception of my one more left-wing aunt who removed herself from the family many years ago. She visits, but she doesn't live nearby anymore. And with the exception of her, all of the women in my family move like they are under a black cloud, like they are in the shadows, you know? Realizing that was a lot, but growing up and acknowledging subconsciously that I wasn't going to gain any respect. And that's why I needed to be a tomboy. That's why I needed to perpetuate a more masculine view of myself to other people. And it still didn't do anything unless somebody watched me beat a male in something, whether it was sports or whatever. Unless I came out on top, I would not get respect. And even if I came out on top, usually it would be, oh, she got lucky, or that boy is just particularly weak and it doesn't mean anything. There was never, ever a way for me to garner respect. And it actually still happens. A couple years ago when I was bartending, I was working at this place. A lot of the people working there were just not super active. I've always worked out. I've always rock climbed. I've always been really fit. And so at that bar, I just ended up becoming the muscle, so to speak. As silly as that sounds, my 5'4.5" ass is the muscle at this bar, simply because I had the grip strength to open bottles. I had the strength to like pick heavy things up. I had a toolbox that was always in my car so I could fix things all over. Like I just became a very masculine presence at that place. And I thought it was kind of humorous. And I told my dad about it when I was at his house one time for a little barbecue. And I was like, oh, it's kind of funny at work. I've become the brawn. You know, my male manager will ask me to open things for him. And my dad, instead of being like, that's my girl, like, you know, my strong daughter, it was, oh, what a weak piece of shit man. And I'm just like, doesn't it occur to you at all, just at all, that maybe your daughter is stronger than average and like you're allowed to show any sense of like understanding or respect or pride in her whatsoever? And then that moment was just like, oh, my dad's never going to respect me. Okay, never mind. Then I don't even have to worry about it. I don't even have to worry about trying. But it was literally like 30 years until I came to that point. You know what I mean? Back to my indoctrination. So I had to call my mom and dad sir or ma'am. There was also, of course, corporal punishment in our house. We got our asses beat if we did anything wrong. But if it was a minor infraction, then we were told to drop down and do 20 push-ups. And it was wild because like I thought that was normal. And then in school, like in PE, I'm fucking cranking out push-ups like it's nobody's business. I'm crushing it. And all of the kids are like, oh, like they're not, like they've never done a push-up before. Their form is bad.
They look like noodles.
And multiple PE classes at multiple different schools because military, we moved a lot. Actually, funny story. I think we only moved once because of the military. And the rest of it was because my mom doesn't like herself. So she has to keep leaving until she finds happiness, but she never finds it. So we went to multiple different schools, multiple different PE classes, was brought up to the front of the class to show everybody else the proper push-up form, which also, by the way, was not just because, oh, she's doing the form really good and I can have her show the class. It was also because PE teachers don't actually want to do their job. You're just some guy with all of that using physical, like in the military, they call it getting smoked or getting rolled. And it's where you get in trouble and you have to do calisthenics or labor to make up for it. So that was part of our upbringing. And I think because of that physical aspect of it, and because you're supposed to be the best soldier possible, there was a lot of competition taught to us. Another part of that was my brother and I were very different and very similar in a lot of ways. The ways that we're different is my brother was really good at things like sports and video games. And I was really good at sports and using my brain. My brother would be really competitive with me because I would look over his shoulder while he's doing homework and not know what he's doing and just like be sitting there frustrated. And I would just like list off all the answers to him. And he would get fucking infuriated and like try to fight me because he just needed to be on top. Everyone in my family is very much like that. And I think the military forces that mentality into people. Like they have to be better than the person next to them somehow, which is also really insane because like when it comes down to it and you get deployed somewhere, you become a family with the people that you're deployed with because you have nobody else. The military causes people to be really racist at home. And then when they're deployed, they become a family with whoever's next to them. obviously disturbing indoctrination because they come home and all of a sudden they're racist again. It was really competitive between my brother and I. And also the love that we received at home was very conditional. So it was like we had to do everything right or we wouldn't be loved. I did not do very well in that environment. I'm not a competitive person. And I was constantly trying to like keep my brother out of trouble and like smooth things over and picking up after him as he did shit around the house so that he wouldn't get in trouble because I considered him family, but he did not consider me family. You know what I mean? Then as we get older, I'm like 11 or 12, and I mentioned to my dad in conversation, it had happened to come up naturally. If I ever get married, I want to keep my last name. I don't want to take somebody else's last name. I like my last name. And my dad said that if I married a man who allowed me to keep my last name, then he wasn't a real man. Between him and my mom being very male centered and saying very misogynistic things as well, I was super ashamed of being in a female body just from the get go. And my parents treated us and spoke to us like they were drill instructors. Obviously, they would tell us drop down, give them 20 and stuff for punishments. But it really felt like their goal was to intimidate us into compliance. There was never understanding unless somebody was witnessing the situation. Like if I knocked over a glass of milk, I would immediately start crying because my mom would be like, God fucking damn it, Laura. Like, God, now I've got to clean this up. Like, go to your room and shit like that. But if there was somebody else around and I knocked over a glass of milk and I'd start crying, my mom would be like, don't cry, honey. It's just a glass of milk. It's nothing.
The first time I remember my father saying he was proud of me was when we were in a meeting with my college. It's not a counselor, but the person who helps you put together your schedule for your degree. He told her that he was so proud of me. I was one of the most organized people he ever met, that I was driven, and I felt like I had been plopped into a different reality. He had never even indicated I was any of those things throughout my life.
Yeah.
And this was when I was probably 20 years old.
Yeah.
Everything was either getting compared to other kids or straight up insults.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was a 180. Very confused. I did not understand what the hell was happening.
Yeah.
Because that was the first time I ever remember my father telling somebody else he was proud of me. It wasn't to me, it was to somebody else.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And then after that point, he would tell me that he was proud of me because of all the progress that I was making, the way that I was getting straight A's, the way I studied, the way I stayed organized. After I started getting recognition from this institution by way of quantifiable grades,
Right.
and praise from teachers, then he was proud of me.
Yep. All of those things were already happening, regardless if it came from the institution or not. Whether they recognize it or not, you were already doing those things. Even if he had seen it, it would not have mattered. He needed to hear it from the institution to be able to say that he was proud of you because, or at least that's my assumption because it sounds very similar to my family. I don't know. I don't know why it's so real that until there is outside recognition, they will not recognize anything you do as good. And I don't get it.
Anytime another adult would praise me growing up in general, he would agree. Honestly, sometimes he would turn it back around when we were in private and use it against me for some reason.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it wasn't until it was public recognition that he took that praise. He accepted that praise for himself as if he had done anything to earn it, to help me get there.
If you're not doing anything good, then you're worthless and that you don't know whose kid they are. But once you do something that they approve of, all of a sudden you're a trophy to them. The upbringing that I had is more upsetting when I learn about my mom's upbringing and how she just perpetuated it. She was treated like trash in the military for being a woman. She also was in a male dominated field. She was a machinist. So she was a machinist in the Navy. She was treated like crap there. When she got out of the Navy and went into the civilian workforce, she was still treated like crap because it was still a male dominated field. Maybe if there's a machinist who happens to be listening to this, they'll understand. But my mom was put on 5 different machines to manage all at one time when everybody else had 2 machines to manage. And she also made significantly less money than anybody else there and was doing more than twice the work. Instead of my mom becoming a feminist, she just became hateful towards everyone, didn't trust anyone or anything. She has no friends from her military service. She has no friends from her childhood left. She has one old work friend that she might talk to every once in a while. She took her negative experience from the military and her upbringing and everything and just made it so much worse. Congratulations. Somehow you made your life so much worse than it could have been, and you weren't even a drug addict. How do you do that? That's crazy. And then like the babysitters that she would hire, the first babysitter my brother ever had, he's older. The first babysitter he ever had, she had to fire because that babysitter was beating my brother. But my mom and dad were hitting us at home anyway. And so that just shows that it's literally not about your child at all. It's about ownership. If it was about your child, then you also wouldn't be hitting them. And I think from my mom's experience in the Navy and experience growing up, constantly being told that she's not enough, everything that happened, she viewed it as an attack on her character. Everything negative that came at her in any way, shape, or form, she viewed it as an attack on her character. There was no growth. There was no way to move beyond things because you couldn't be like, hey, this is what happened. We need to grow from here. She didn't have that. She's not capable. And she would argue with the school about my brother's behavior, like he wasn't being poorly behaved. And she was just offended that the school didn't like her son. And I'm like, your son is a handsome, tall white man. He literally has the world at his fucking fingertips, and everybody hates him because of who he is as a person. And guess where he thrived? The military.
Couldn't have seen that one coming.
Climbed the ranks fast, was deployed several times. At one point, he was a trainer for probably thousands, if not several hundred people that he trained to be infantry, literally trained to kill people. And that's the person that I was abused by my whole life.
What character building you've got there.
And it's all very based in military ideology, even though like I was only in the military for a little over a month. And what a godsend that was. I probably would have killed myself, honestly, if I had stayed because I got sent home for medical reasons. God bless. Wow. What a fucking horror show. I know that there are people who have really positive experiences in the military. You people have regulated nervous systems. I have met a lot of people in the military whose nervous systems are just very well regulated. They just want to be told what to do.
Oh, well, fair enough.
And then there's a much larger part of the military that people are extremely dysregulated and also don't understand their own personal views enough to have any stance on anything, which is why they end up aligning with whatever the military tells them is right.
Oh, okay. That speaks to some of my father's behavior. Definitely. Staunchly conservative, definitely very Republican, believed the military was great. I came out of the womb listening to Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity.
Same.
He was on constantly. He used to sit for hours and read the Drudge Report. I don't know if you...
Oh, I know it.
Okay.
I know it well.
You are familiar.
Yeah.
From my experience. He is the type of person that is very, just tell me what to believe.
Yeah.
Tell me what makes sense,
Mhm.
and I'll believe it.
Yep.
The government and just believing black and white things
Yeah.
was easier for him, it seemed,
Mhm.
than anything more complex.
Yeah.
Because he, used to go to church, he used to call himself a Christian, and there were things that he was understanding of. He really loved the Proverbs. They're straightforward, gives you what you're supposed to know.
Mhm.
If the subject got into anything deeper, like predestination or God being omnipresent, omniscient, it was incredibly confusing and he couldn't wrap his head around it. Suffice to say, those topics are incredibly difficult to understand because they only make no sense.
Yeah, I like the thought that God being omnipresent was difficult for him to wrap his brain around because he was constantly being non-Christian for most of his life. And he's like, fuck, I can't. If God's watching me all the time, like, I'm not going to go to heaven. Like, that's what I like to think about is like, he's like,
oh, I did not even think about that because, yeah, he became a Christian much later in his life. I'm going to be honest. I think he became a Christian and started going to church to fix himself and to find a wife.
What luck, huh?
That's where he met my mom.
Good Lord.
And he really only started dating her because he wanted to date somebody else, but she had a kid and didn't have as much free time.
Your mom had a kid before you started?
Oh, no. There was another woman at their church who he seemed more interested in.
Oh.
But this woman had a child.
Got
she
it.
was a
Okay,
single
okay,
mother.
okay, I see.
And didn't have the type of free time that he required.
Right, from his woman. I realize that a lot of what I've talked about is not directly related to the military. It's all related to my parents' behavior that was formed by their military experience or molded more so also by their military experience. And both of them, again, had fathers who were veterans and grew up in a military family from the start. So it was just doubled down. My dad is very similar, where like he needs to be told what to believe and then he will just
Mhm.
staunchly believe that for the rest of his life. He has the ability to change his opinion on things, but I
Mhm.
don't think he has the ability to change his identity with things.
Yes, I know what you mean exactly.
And then my mom is just like, there's a part of her that knows what's right and what's wrong, but she
Uh-huh.
refuses to acknowledge when the wrong is happening. When we lived in Vegas, we noticed how many homeless people there were. And she was like, cool, I think we should put together some like homeless care packages for people, just like a bag with like a bottle of water in it and some granola bars and like a $5 bill or a $10 bill, whatever we can afford. And she was like, and maybe a cigarette or something like that. And I was like, nah, I'll give them a joint. But we did. We did. We put some of those in our cars. And if we would see a homeless person, we would pass it to them as, you know, at a stoplight or whatever. And it was my mom's
Uh-huh.
idea. And I didn't have the heart to tell her at the time, like, hey, just so you know, this is like a super kind and like also socialist move. And like, she'd fucking lose her mind, you know, if
Uh-huh.
she thought that she was being perceived as a socialist or something like that. And it's just like, you're allowed to do nice things for people and also acknowledge that your political beliefs go against these things and acknowledge that it's wrong that your political affiliation thinks this way. Like, you're allowed to change and grow. There's no
Mhm.
rules against that, you know?
Yeah, I find the same things with my family. Like I said, my dad, very staunch in his convictions. It's
Mhm.
incredibly difficult for him. There was a point a couple years ago where I was visiting home for my grandfather's funeral, and we had gone out to breakfast, and we were talking about something. I was probably going on some rant about the government or politics or something like that, because I've been very open about my views over the last several years. Like,
Mhm.
I'm
That's
not going
good.
to
Yeah.
sit around and mince words with you. It is what it is. This is fucked up.
Yeah.
And he did comment, we didn't go quite into it, but he did make a comment about how maybe his rose colored glasses were coming off.
Oh.
I don't quite know what he meant by that,
Yeah.
but seeing everything that's going on, I don't know how he feels at this point in time, because we can't spend more than 20 seconds in a room together
Right.
without screaming at each other.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that was a very interesting comment. So I think there is space for reflection
Wow.
and self-awareness.
Yeah.
I just, like you're saying, I don't know if they know how to continue that or
Mhm.
handle it.
Yeah. I really do think it's just so much a part of their identity and their ego that they don't know how to separate from it. Because I know if there were no labels attached to anything and I like went through, you know, a PowerPoint with my dad that's like, hey, right or wrong, federal agents killing people in the street who don't deserve to die, killing people in the street execution style, right or wrong, wrong automatically. But put it with all of this political bullshit commentary around it. And he's like, well, actually, they deserved it. And I'm like, no, they didn't. And you acknowledge that they didn't deserve it in a separate setting. You know what I mean?
You swap white person with someone who immigrated here legally but is not white,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it's a different story.
Exactly. As long as what you agree with either has to do with your identity or what you don't agree with doesn't have to do with your identity, then you're content. Like that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Dude, your identity is actually meaningless. For instance, our dads being older generation white men in this country, like
Mhm.
your identity doesn't need to be staunch conservative just because that's the fucking MO. That's the MO for older white men. There's tons of older white men who don't have the same views of bigotry and they are living just fine.
They're surviving just fine.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
In fact, they're surviving much better than the other guys are.
They're a lot happier. They probably have less chronic health issues,
Yeah.
and
I know. I think about the fact that like high blood pressure is a really common thing in my family. How different would our blood pressures be if they got therapy when they were younger? Like I think even mine would be lower if they got therapy.
yeah, I would have less chronic health issues.
I recently told my dad, I was like, listen, there is science behind this. There is information that you can look up yourselves to verify this. Trauma passes through generations. So I
Uh-huh.
told my dad, I have your trauma, I have my mom's trauma, and I have the trauma
Mhm.
of both of your lineages in addition to my own
Yep.
because they were asking me why I didn't want to have kids. Well, Cheryl, my dad's wife, was asking me if why I didn't want to have kids. And yeah, I was like, listen, You beat the shit out of me. My brother beat the shit out of me. My mom beat the shit out of us. Like, everyone made me feel like scum for growing up to the point where I almost killed myself in my 20s. So, no,
Yeah.
I'm not going to have kids so that you guys can enjoy being grandparents every once in a while. Go fuck yourselves, respectfully. No, I'm not going to be a parent because of all of the trauma that you guys gave to me. Are you fucking serious?
Not only that, how could you trust them with your children?
Genuinely. And the thing is like, I would trust an older kid, like a kid that you don't have to change diapers for and stuff. I would trust an older
Uh-huh.
kid with my dad for a long time. I genuinely would trust an older child with
Uh-huh.
my dad for a long time. That child may not enjoy themselves the entire time. They may recognize that my dad is not capable of caring for a child long term, but he will have fun with them. He will make sure they eat. He might give them beer. I don't know. He will play with them and he will make sure that they stay alive and clean and comfortable.
Man, low bar.
Hold on. This is the other thing, though.
Okay.
The difference is between him and my mom is my mom will make sure that they eat and make sure that they have a place to sleep. That's it. My dad would be a better option because he will literally get down on the floor and play with kids. He will do something weird, like he'll just think of something bizarre to like distract the kid that seems fun to them. Even if he's doing it for his own reason, like
Uh-huh.
get out of my hair, he's still creating something fun for the kid to do. And my mom would just be like, get out of my face.
Uh-huh.
Like, it doesn't even matter if it's her grandkid. I've literally
Oh
heard
my
her
God.
talk to her existing living grandkids like they are the scum of the earth. So my dad would never talk to my kid like that.
Ugh.
So that's the other difference. Is like, I know that if I had a
Good.
kid, I could leave that kid in my dad's care and they would be okay. They would probably be alive at the end of it.
They might survive. There's a higher chance of that.
Yeah, exactly. With my mom, they would come back broken and they might not come back at all.
Oh.
So so all things considered, I think my dad would be a better option. Basically, that's why I don't want to have kids. And that's something I talked to my dad about as well. Is like, I acknowledged my mom thought she was doing a lot better than her parents because she wasn't abusing us in the same ways. My mom, when she grew up, she got a bad grade in second grade and she had really long hair that like went down to her waist or went down to her hips, and her mom cut it all off at her ears as punishment. And my mom mentioned that when I was a kid. She mentioned it in a way to say like, at least I'm not cutting off your hair as punishment. I mean, yeah, I guess that's cool, but like that's also a
Yeah.
really psychologically fucked up thing to do to your child. And saying that I'm lucky for not receiving
Uh-huh.
that treatment is also really kind of fucking weird, right?
Yeah, that's definitely bizarre.
So she joins the military and becomes worse and meets my dad.
Oh, match made in heaven.
They met through her brother, who was also in the military. All three of them were in the Navy. The crazy part is my mom didn't want to date my dad. He ended up conspiring with my uncle, my mom's brother, and trapping my mom in a house to force her to have dinner with my dad. Now, to be fair, this is all said from my mom. This is a story from my mom.
Okay.
And with that being said, every story that I've mentioned to people in our family, whether it was like my cousin on my mom's side or, mention it to my dad about something that happened when they were married, 90% of the things that my mom has told me are lies.
Okay. All right.
They start dating. They're both in the military together. My mom gets out of the military because she gets pregnant with my brother. And then my dad stays in the military and we moved a couple times. She gets out of the military before my brother's born, like while she's pregnant with my brother. So she gets out before either of us are born, but my dad is still in until I was like 6 or 7. And then he retired then. And then the both of them worked in DC because that's what happens after you leave the military is you almost certainly get a government job.
Yeah, my dad worked in the Pentagon after he left.
My mom worked at the Pentagon. My dad worked as a contractor for several different war companies, basically like Raytheon
Ooh.
and Lockheed Martin and all those that make things that kill people. So in the time growing up outside of DC, my dad is, a fresh veteran who's working for the government in DC. My mom is working for the government in DC or near DC, whatever. And 9/11 happens. And there is a protest in DC protesting the war, obviously, protesting the Iraqi war, which, by the way, we went to DC to go to the museums and there just happened to be a protest that day because it was 2001.
Oh, yeah.
We weren't going online to see what events were happening in fucking DC. We were just like, hey, let's take the metro into DC and go to a museum. And there just happened to be a fucking massive protest going on.
Fantastic. Man, living near DC and visiting DC as a kid is always so crazy.
It was also really weird growing up in a really staunchly conservative family and not knowing that other people's families weren't like that in that area. I thought that was
Oh,
just a
yeah.
thing. Like, I thought everybody in the DC area was related to the military or the government somehow and had conservative
Uh-huh.
views because that's what I was raised in. And then going to this protest and like seeing all these other people who are like, actually, this is not okay. And being indoctrinated and being like, what are these idiots? You don't want to go to war, blah, blah, blah. Like, we were attacked. What do you expect? By the way, 9/11 was an inside job. So
Yep.
at this time, I was like, what do you mean? Of course we're going to go to war. We were attacked by terrorists. What are you, idiots?
Yeah.
And I'm 10.
Oh, yeah. You don't know any better.
Yeah. So I'm walking around seeing all these people with protest signs. And because I am doing everything I can to make my mom respect me and think
Mhm.
highly of me, what I was always doing was trying to make her laugh or try to say something that she agreed with. We're walking around this protest and I'm like, hey, $5 to see the freak show. And I'm like talking about these protesters, you know? And of course, my mom cracks up and thinks it's just hilarious. And there's a man who is part of the protest and he is taping up with duct tape an American flag. Like he's like taping up a symbol on it or a word or something, but he's like
Uh-huh.
using this American flag as his picket sign. And so he's taping it up actively before he hoists it up. And so I see him doing this and I walk over and I go, can you explain to me why you're doing that? Because I genuinely didn't understand what he was doing. I was just like, why are you taping up the flag? Like, can you explain to me what you're doing here? Like, I don't
Mhm.
understand. And of course, I'm a 10-year-old kid, so he's not going to be mean to me. He's like a 30-year-old liberal guy who's just like sees me as like, boy, this poor indoctrinated child. You know, like I could tell that that was the look in his eyes. Yeah. And he just kind of like,
Oh,
he like looked down and he like looked back at me with kind of like a sad smile, you know?
yeah.
And he was just like, you will understand when you're older.
Oh.
And I was like, huh, what was that supposed to mean? You know?
Yeah, it puts the thoughts in your head.
For real. I was just like, uh-oh, am I on the wrong side and I don't know it, you know?
I know, it makes you feel like you got in trouble, and you're like, "I don't
Yeah.
know why I'm in
But
trouble
I
right
didn't feel
now."
that way. I did not, because of his like kindness in his voice and the way
Uh-huh.
he kind of like, he had just had this very calm presence and he looked down at what he was doing and like looked back at my dumb little child face and was just like, with a smile, but like also some sadness. He was just like, you will
Yeah.
understand when you're older. He said it so kind that I was just like,
Yeah.
fuck, what is going on here? My mom never talks to me with that kindness, you know?
Yeah, my mom doesn't talk to me like that. What the fuck?
Yeah, there's a stranger at a protest who I'm making fun of actively, and he's being kind. And so from that moment on, something in me, something very intuitive in me was like, this moment is going to stay with you for the rest of your life, and you're going
Yep.
to reflect on this when your views do change. And I like acknowledged that.
Mhm.
Like, I was just like, I'm starting to realize maybe what I'm being taught isn't right. 9/11 was an inside job that manipulated a lot of people to join the military. My brother and I probably would have joined anyway, simply due to the strong connection that we felt between military service and our self-worth based on how our family had
Mhm.
taught us. And we were also both raised to manage the needs of a mentally unstable woman while desperately striving for approval from an emotionally unavailable father, while also receiving this deep nationalist indoctrination. Between all of that, we were never taught to ask for help. We were actually taught to not ask for help, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We were actively taught to ignore our mental health. We were taught that emotions were not real, that there was something wrong with us if we were feeling emotions. If I was crying or like upset about something, my mom would just be like, God, you are so emotional. You are way too emotional. Like
Ugh.
there's something wrong with you. And so, never taught to ask for help. We were taught to ignore our mental health. We were taught to vilify therapists. We were taught to mock any type of education that did not align with right wing values.
Mhm.
We were taught to honor war. And most importantly, our value, our intrinsic value in who we are as a person lied exclusively in what we could provide to others and how little our needs were. What little
Mhm.
needs we had, the least amount of needs we had is when we would get more love, which I'm sure you probably identify with.
That sounds very similar to Christianity. I'm
Yeah,
gonna be
just making
so for
yourself
real.
very small while
Mhm.
also making yourself available for everything. Luckily, when I joined the military, I got sent home for bunions, but in the month that I was in basic training, I realized that they were some of the dumbest people I'd ever met in like seriously. There were only 2 drill sergeants the whole time I was there, which by the way, there were a dozen or more. There were only 2 drill sergeants the whole time I was there that spoke to anybody with even just a speck of respect in their voices. And one of those two only talked to people with respect in the middle of the night during night duty when most of the base was sleeping and there was just like 3 people awake.
And they couldn't be, there was no witness.
Right. There was no witness to them being kind. That just shows so much more how the military perpetuates shitty treatment of each other, shitty treatment of people. Basic training is designed to break your spirit, but I was raised like that. I was raised with basic training mentality. So my spirit was already broken. When I got there, when I got to basic training, and I really thought I would be prepared for it, but I like getting into basic training and realizing, oh my God, this is exactly how I grew up. And it was wrong. I did not understand my upbringing sucked as bad as it did until I joined the military. And I was like, oh my God, this is how my parents treated me when I was 3 years old. To relive it as an adult and have it be like something that was a choice of mine, every cell in my body was like, this is not right for you. When I got sent to med quarters with the issue on my feet, and the doctor kind of gave me the option, he was like, you could get through, like, it's just going to be excruciatingly painful for you. So I'll leave it up to you. I'm not going to be able to get through basic training with this excruciating pain. I'm on my feet for 16 hours a day at least. The military fucking sucks. I didn't sleep for the first 3 days I was there, and they do it on purpose to literally break you. He's like, oh, well, you'll just be in excruciating pain all of this time, and we're not going to pay for the surgery for it. So you just have to deal with it. What do you want to do?
Go home.
Are you fucking serious? I'm going to have to get emergency surgery at some point. You have to wear steel-toed boots when you go through basic training. And the steel toe part was literally digging into my bone, being shoved into my foot more. And even the wide ones weren't working. So either you guys give me surgery so that this problem goes away and I stay here and recuperate and go through basic training, or I go the fuck home. Just cut me loose. Are you serious?
Yeah.
And I feel like, and I don't know how much truth there is to this, but I feel like maybe in situations like that, they put the choice on the soldier because I'm assuming that there might be some sort of financial legalities if you kick somebody out for something versus if they leave on their own. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but it really felt like he was trying to get me to make the decision for him. But anyway, I'm really grateful for it. I'm really grateful that I had bunions at such a young age that fucking caused me to get sent home because that would have been a fucking nightmare. It still took me a few years to kind of undo all of that indoctrination. I had a falling out with one of my best friends after that, and it was her that was basically like, you're a fucking monster, because I was talking to people the way that my family talked to me, which was with zero respect. Because anger was branded as not an emotion, then that's what it was. Like, I just was angry all the time and I didn't even recognize it because it wasn't anger in my household. It was normal. After that falling out with that friend, then I started to reflect more, started looking more into psychology, eventually went to therapy, and really undid all of the rest of that. So
Congrats on you for getting out of there. That's really fucking awesome. Yeah, no, it's not an easy feat.
Doing a lot of research on PTSD was really helpful. PTSD in soldiers and the psychology behind war propaganda really helped me undo a lot of that. It's not like I even ever fought a war, but I still feel like I had the same PTSD that like people in war feel. I always knew that service members in the military were just pawns. Before I ever even took the oath, I knew that they were pawns. But acknowledging that humans don't deserve to be pawns was the hurdle. That was the real hurdle in getting over this indoctrination. Because I acknowledge that people die in war. They accept it. Cool, I'm signing up to be in the military. I might fight this war, which means I might die. But understanding that humans do not deserve to be the pawns of other humans was the real mental hurdle for me.
In Christianity, you're referred to as God's soldier. Makes it really easy to latch on to the indoctrination of the military and the nationalism. Yes, thank you. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, it makes it so easy to get people on that because it's like, oh, well, we're soldiers for God and America is God's country.
That is so wild to be like, America is God's country. It was founded on stealing it from the natives and destroying them, and then bringing a bunch of slaves over here and creating a whole country where nobody but white men has rights. Like, what the fuck do you mean that's God's fucking country?
The founding fathers weren't Christian. I don't know if y'all need to know that, but the founding fathers weren't Christian. Everyone's like, under God. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, fine, whatever.
These were people who were being oppressed in England, and they came over here and just literally made the same system. They were just like, we don't want to be the oppressed people, so we're going to come to a new country and create a system where we can then be the oppressors. That's exactly what happened.
They decided that they needed to be in power. And they still own people and they still did all that stuff. It's not different.
Except for John Adams. I think it was John. Was it John Adams? I think it was John
I don't
Adams.
know. I was bad at history.
There was one founding father that never owned slaves because he knew it was fucking wrong.
Wow. A jewel.
He was like, all of these men who own slaves will say that they are on the right side of morality when they're not. For anybody that doesn't know this, I cannot believe we were taught this in school, that George Washington's teeth, his dentures were wooden. They were slaves' teeth, literally pulled out of a living person's mouth and given to a white man so that he could have dentures and they didn't have teeth
If
anymore.
you've ever been to Mount Vernon, you can visit where those enslaved people lived.
It is very heavy. The air there is disturbingly heavy.
My parents' house is, we live on George Washington's farmland, and there was just this air of eerie darkness. I actually grew up with a dogwood tree in the backyard. I have no idea if this is true, but once I learned that we lived on George Washington's farmland, I just kind of felt that that was probably where someone who was enslaved died, and the tree grew in its place. And so it was a thing of beauty that represented tragedy.
Yeah. Wow.
Anything else you want to cover? Or do you feel like you got everything out that you wanted to talk about?
There's more to the nationalism, but I really feel like it's just honestly like regurgitation of what's actively happening right now. All the things that are being perpetuated in the media, especially like the media that's being puppeteered by the presidential administration, they're just spouting the same shit I was taught as a kid. Because I inherently knew that some of these views were wrong. Like from the very start, I knew that some of these views were wrong. And I quite literally convinced myself they were jokes. I convinced myself that my mom and my dad's racism was humor. In the military, each branch will poke fun at the other branches. In my mind, that's how I saw it as a kid. I was like, oh, you don't actually feel that way about those different ethnicities. You are just poking fun the way that you would poke fun at the Marine Corps or, the Army. When I got older, turned 18 and could start voting, and I realized my parents were constantly verifying whether or not I voted Republican, because I would like vote in local ones or whatever, and I would vote for who I thought sounded good based on what they were talking about, like based on their policies.
Almost like that's what you're supposed to do.
And so it wasn't always Republican, but I always felt the pressure to tell my parents I was voting Republican. And I was even a registered Republican as a voter because I was afraid to mark anything else.
Yeah, me too.
I've never voted for a Republican president.
Good for you.
And my parents would believe that I did. I would just like, who do you think I voted for? And they would leave it at that because they would assume I voted for who they voted for. This realization that I was like, oh my God, all these years they were actually really racist, actually really misogynistic, actually really prejudiced against gay people and all this. Like, this was never a joke.
I definitely knew that it wasn't a joke. My dad was probably still is super racist. He would make such ignorant comments, call everybody illegals, because that was the rhetoric of the time and the rhetoric of now. Even then, I knew it was the stupidest thing that you could be saying about somebody. Like, I don't even want to repeat anything because it's not explicit, but it was just so stupid.
A lot of people are coming from other countries where their government is fucking things up. But a lot of the time, it's because the United States got our hands in there somewhere. Then they come here with different rules, and we're just like, they don't abide by the rules the same way that we do. And it's like, because you're conditioned to abide by these rules, like your life depends on it. If I get in this conversation again with any of my family members, I plan to just be like, listen, I don't know what news sources you use, but I would recommend using news sources from small foreign countries that America has no affiliation to, because they have absolutely no reason to lie.
In order to actually know what's going on, you have to look at international news, and I'm very scared to look at international news, so I will be very honest with you, I avoid it.
And if the next few years everything just gets exponentially worse, then I'll just leave the country. I don't know. Cut my losses.
It's either an RV or a boat, but I can't swim and I hate the open water. So
Okay, so probably not a boat that's probably not a good call.
probably not, but you never know.
If you're willing to learn to swim and accept the open water.
Ooh. Yeah, no. I think that I'll be okay, and then I see those videos of ships at night being in the middle of the ocean. During the day, it's like, okay, whatever, but like, no, at night, there's nothing happening.
When I went on a cruise, I did not go on the deck at night for the first night or two because I was just terrified to see it. And then when I did, Oh my fucking God, it's horrifying. It is
It's
so
so
scary.
bad.
Also, it's strange in environments like that where I'm like a difference of 1.5 feet of where I'm located and I will die. You know, like no one would
Uh-huh.
find me. Between being on the edge of this boat and being in the ocean is only a very small difference. It is not that hard to fall over the railing. And I have found those experiences, once I get through the initial moment of debilitating fear, actually, this is great. I'm chilling. This is
Uh-huh.
like a sensory deprivation tank. My thing my whole life has been the safest place for me is being completely alone. So whenever I'm in a situation like that, I have all of this fear and then this sudden realization, oh, I'm actually in the safest place I could be when it comes to humanity.
Because the scariest thing about the earth are humans.
We got to ask the dolphins about it.
I don't know if I would ask the dolphins because apparently they are horrific creatures themselves.
Oh, that makes sense.
Apparently they're very smart and very evil.
I've heard that dolphins can do mean things.
I haven't done a ton of research on this, but from what I've heard, they are just inherently evil.
I really want to know why it's illegal to talk to dolphins. That's fucking crazy.
What?
Hold on, I gotta look it up. While simply speaking out loud to a dolphin is not explicitly illegal, attempting to interact with via sounds or elicit a response from wild dolphins is illegal.
Well, they're CIA agents, of course, just like the birds.
Not physically interacting with dolphins, I get it. I'm sure there's lots of laws like that around lots of wild animals. Not being able to elicit sounds or make sounds towards a dolphin is fucking insane. And that just makes it seem even more like dolphins know some shit we're not supposed to know.
They're aliens, probably.
That also makes sense why they would be evil. If they know shit that's very detrimental to humanity and they're not fucking telling anybody, they're part of the problem.
All right, so American nationalism, the military industrial complex, all of our
Yeah.
trauma, all of this random shit.
It's not to say that countries shouldn't have militaries. I understand that if there's a hostile entity, if there's a country that's hostile towards you and you need to protect the people of your country, it helps to have a military for that. What doesn't help the world, all of the toxic masculinity and really bad conditioning that makes them feel like pawns and makes them think that they don't deserve anything in life. So anyway, long story short is military not entirely bad. American military, very, very icky. Nationalism, no bueno. I don't care what country you're from, you're allowed to love your culture and all of that, but borders mean nothing to me. Go where you want to go. Nationalism, sorry, bullshit. There's no borders. This earth is home. Shall we do a blessing?
Would you like to do the blessing?
I think I'll do the blessing. I would just like to send a blessing of self-love and confidence in anybody who dealt with really negative conditioning in their upbringing, whether it was military or some other facet of life that made you lose your confidence and your self-love. This blessing I'm sending out to everybody with glowing hearts, that your self-confidence and your self-love returns to you 20-fold.
I love it. Lovely blessing.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.